What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Line of the Stars. I'm Jordan, and we're back today with this month's dispatch of the Starships Collection from Fanhome, and one where I'm not, kind of like last month, we're kind of delving into Star Trek Picard a little bit here, Season 3 specifically, and one where I'm not quite sure about this model. Now, I understand. I really like the design, but this ship? Really? Well, it's the Shrike. It is the baddie ship from season 3 of Star Trek Picard. I gotta say, on screen, a very, very cool looking ship. If there's menacing Star Trek ships, it's definitely one of them. But I don't know, it just doesn't seem that super interesting to me. The scimitar, it kind of has a scimitar sort of vibe to it. Anyway, I'm not so sure about this one, but as I was saying in the last month's episode, I wasn't so sure about that one either, and it turned out pretty damn cool. So let's go ahead and get our package open for this month and see what we're looking at. I have done zero research. I have no idea anything about the design history of this model, the ship, nothing. I'm assuming if we're to put bets on, I would say that the design had something to do probably with Dave Blass, who was a production designer for Star Trek Picard Season 3, did a lot of the amazing designs for Star Trek, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was his design. So let's go ahead and find out, shall we? I do have to say, the shipping these days from Fanhome has been much better. God. We all know what OSM was, and I'm super glad that that is over with. I'm going to go ahead and pop my invoice out real fast. There we go. And here we are. We have the Shrike. Very cool. No fanfare. They tend to just shove the box within the box and they call it good. So there it is. There's the Shrike. There's our box. These boxes are pretty nice. That's kind of a cool design. And anything else special? And that's going to be how it's going to be positioned. Nice and narrow profile. Looks like we got red impulse engines. Let's see if they actually got it right. Let's go ahead and crack this bad boy open. See if I can actually get it without having to rip anything. Indeed. There we go. I like being able to pull these pieces off as one piece. Let's set that off to the side. Excellent. And let's go ahead and get it open. And let's take a look at our magazine and see what we're dealing with here today. So, here's our magazine. And these magazines are really nice. I do like these. Excellent. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Perfect. And of course, if you'd like to follow along with the magazine, go ahead and pause on any of the screens. We have issue or dispatch number 6. And we have the Shrike. Very nice looking magazine. All right. So it is 659 meters long. Vadic was the commander. Very, very well acted. I have to say that the casting for season 3 of Picard was on point. Vadic was a fantastic bad guy. This has the quantum tunneling portal, technology that we will see in one season of Star Trek and then we will never see again. And our propulsion is impulse and warp. All right, so in order to kind of get my head around this whole thing, I went ahead and read ahead, and it's kind of an interesting thought and concept. Obviously, they were looking for, with Vadic, the bad guy in season 3 of Picard, they were kind of looking for a ship that could, be menacing, be large, be imposing, but not be anything that we kind of recognize. Now, obviously, Vadic was a changeling, one of the founders from what we saw in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and they were trying to avoid some of those design elements that we kind of got used to the Dominion using. And so he's like, well, what if, obviously this changeling went and just got a ship, like just a third party ship, and then outfitted it just to be the meanest and most angry ship they could possibly make it. So that was kind of what the design thought was. They were trying to avoid, anything sort of the familiar design elements of like Nero's ship in Star Trek 2009 or the scimitar or anything like that. But kind of given the overall, make it look like a predator, make it look imposing. And the Klingon bird of prey is one of the ships that they kind of said, okay, kind of go with it. Now, what they got was the Shrike, and it's kind of a cool story, and we'll get into that here in a second, of how the design kind of came to be. But this thing is a beast. In pure Star Trek world, Star Trek universe starships, this thing is an absolute beast. It has 40 isolytic burst warheads, which are illegal since the Kinnemer Accords, 88 plasma torpedoes, which are the Romulans favored, 236 photon torpedoes, 18 antimatter missiles, 20 pulse wave torpedoes, directed energy weapons, and then of course it had the portal device, which would basically allow it to transport anything from anywhere and basically move it across. And so, like, where you see the Titan kind of flowing in, going to attack, and then the portal comes in, and then all of a sudden the Titan's rear is being, faced towards the Shrike, and it allows for an easy torpedo strike. Very, very cool tech. This thing is an absolute beast. Roughly the size of the Enterprise D, a Galaxy class starship, but that's really just in length and kind of girth. There's not a whole lot of mass to the ship, but it is long and wide, but very flat, which is very, very cool. So here is a little bit of the some of the pictures of it. Kind of slide around so you can see it, but we'll take a better look at it here in just a second, the actual model, and then talking about the design. Now, one of the cool things about this design is I was right. Well, Dave Blast was not directly responsible for it, but his name comes into play here quite a bit. But some big names have actually had a kind of a role to play in this. Now, obviously, Star Trek Picard seasons 2 and 3 were filmed back to back, and they had about 10 months worth of design time before they needed to kind of introduce the Shrike. And they kind of he kind of threw up, okay, think bird of prey, be menacing to the room of art people, and they just kind of went. And there was many people who kind of like contributed to the design. um the idea was is that it kind of needs to be like kind of spidery, sort of, very kind of like threatening and imposing looking. And Dave Zabowski came up with this design, and it's kind of like, obviously you can see that this is kind of where the design kind of came from. But he was only with the production for just a small amount of time. So this was kind of threw up. It was great as an idea, and then they kind of moved it off to the side, kind of took some of the design elements for it, and then they were trying to come up with a design. This looks very much like something from Babylon 5, for instance, right here. But just kind of going through different design iterations, trying to kind of incorporate that design, but not make it look like too Romulan. What was this? Not too wide and stuff like that. This was very flat, but it was too flat, sort of thing. And, as things were starting coming to a close, Dave Blast started to get a little worried. And so he's like, we still don't have a design. Terry Metalis kept throwing it back, saying, I don't like it. I don't like it. Stuff like this was coming up. Very just kind of weird, but works, but, not really in total eye of what he was looking for. And so Dave Blast, being Dave Blast, knows his designers, and he says, okay, John Eves, what do you got? So John was pulled back from a different part of the project, or from, he was available, and he basically penciled out this design here, which is very familiar to what we got. Um, you add Doug Drexler into the mix, and he is going to basically take it and give us our final design through proper rendering and design in the computer and all that. He gave us between Eves and Drexler the Shrike, and I gotta say, it looks like a Star Trek ship because it was designed by Star Trek people. And so, yeah, basically it was kind of like the ideas were kind of floated around the room, the art department room, and then they all kind of were pitching ideas, and they kept kind of grabbing and pulling things from it. Terry would say, I like this, I like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. And eventually all that was given to John Eves, and John Eves go ahead and does what John Eves does best, gets that design, and then Doug Drexler actually makes it real. And so, once again, some of the great Star Trek guys have had a great design, great influence on the design of the ship. And so I am gonna say I am a little bit more excited. Reading these magazines does help. I am a little excited to go ahead and get this unboxed. So That being said, let's go ahead and get that done. Let's go ahead and zoom back out here. And let's go ahead and take a look. Now, I imagine, based on the size of this box, this could actually be a fairly large model. And I hope nothing's broken. And there we are. Oh, look at you. You're kind of cool. Everything seems to be intact. Oh, hello. This thing is very heavy. By far the heaviest of the entire collection. Holy crap. I think this whole thing is die-cast. Wow. This whole model is die-cast. Very nice. Get some of the... There's a lot of styrofoam on here. Off. There we are. It is a very cool design. You kind of get that... kind of made me laugh. That looks like the lower half of the Galaxy class right there. And I imagine that that's exactly what that design thought was right there. The Aztec on there is really, really cool. A lot of surface detail in there. Very, very cool. Wow. Impulse engines are properly, the engines are properly colored as well. Nice red. Looks like either, those are probably transporter emitters right there on either side. Knowing our Star Trek designs. The windows are not quite tampo printed in their proper spots. You can kind of see through here, specifically right there. The tampo print didn't quite get down in the proper spots. Really hard on the scale, the model of the scale, but you know, yeah, don't let that through. But anyway. But yeah, so there it is. Very cool. Not much to kind of note about this. It is a pretty cool design, like I said, but kind of a curious one for why they would choose to do this for the Starships collection. Obviously, we can't have nothing but Federation starships, but you know, if I'm being real, I kind of prefer that. All right, let's go ahead and get our base out. And then we have our clear acrylic piece. And then this looks like it's going to fit in right there. Lock into place. And that's how it sits. I gotta say, that actually looks pretty good sitting on the display. So let's go ahead and get all set up for a little beauty shot, and I'll be right back. All right, well, there she is. The Shrike is here, and, you know, once again, knowing the design of it a little bit kind of helps with the enthusiasm when it comes to this model. It's a curious one as to why you'd want to add this to the collection. I'm curious to see also as well what other alien ships, or not alien, but I guess what other enemy ships, what other non-Federation starships are we going to see in this? I remember seeing the full list, but to be honest, I'm not looking ahead because I like being surprised every single month. So there it is, a very attractive design, designed by some of the greats. Dave Blass had a big part of it, and obviously John Eves and Doug Drexler kind of helped finish up the design. And I got to say that, you know, with the thought and the concept that they went into, a lot of like painstaking time was gone into designing this and making sure that a ship that could, you know, contend with the crew of the Enterprise D and the Enterprise E, if we're going to get a baddie and a ship that can contend with them, it might as well look really cool and look the part. And I got to say that they definitely did do that. And so as we switch over to the top camera up here, we'll go ahead and put that there. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit there. There we are. And kind of catch a top-down view of the Shrike as she spins away. So, there it is, my friends. That's this month's dispatch of the Starships collection from Fanhome. Not sure what's coming next month, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty cool. And they keep kind of stepping up the size, scale, and I don't know, the game of the builds. And I'd like to see, you know, what's going to be coming up next. So next month, whatever's coming up next, you'll see it right here. So that's what I got for you guys today. And I just want to say thank you. I know that there was a million things y'all could have done today. Instead, you spent a couple minutes with me watching me gush over a model, and I think that's pretty damn cool. You guys have any questions or comments, tips, tricks, please leave them down below. Like to support the channel, please like and subscribe. And my friends, until we see each other again, I hope you all have a wonderful day in this beautiful world where we happen to be. And just remember to always live long, prosper.